The rain hammered my shop's corrugated roof like a machine gun when Kina walked in at midnight, her heels clicking against the concrete floor. I was elbow-deep in a 1967 Mustang's engine bay, grease under my fingernails and exhaustion in my bones. She never visited the shop. Not once in 3 years of marriage. "Rhett," she said, her voice carrying that calm, professional tone she used with difficult clients at her PR firm. "I need to talk to you about something." I straightened up, wiping my hands on an oil-stained rag. The fluorescent lights above cast harsh shadows across her face, making her look like a stranger. Maybe she always had been one. "What's on your mind?" I asked, though something in her posture already told me I wouldn't like the answer. She reached into her designer purse and pulled out her iPhone, the spare one she kept for work emergencies. The screen was cracked along one corner, spiderwebbing outward, like the fault lines in our marriage. "I need you to pretend we broke up," she said, sliding the phone across my workbench. "My ex is coming to town, and I want to see if there's still something between us." The words hung in the air between us like exhaust fumes. I stared at the phone, then at her face. No shame, no hesitation, just the same calculated expression she wore when pitching campaigns to corporate executives. "Which ex?" I asked, though I already knew. Jasper Quaid, the tech entrepreneur with the trust fund and the Tesla, the one whose name still made her eyes light up when it came up in conversation. "Jasper," she confirmed. "He's flying in this weekend for a conference. We're having dinner Friday night and—" She shrugged, as if asking your husband to fake a breakup was no different than asking him to pick up milk from the store. I picked up the phone, feeling its weight in my palm. 3 years of marriage, and this was what it came down to. A weekend audition for my replacement. "Okay," I said. The simplicity of my response seemed to catch her off guard. She'd probably prepared for arguments, tears, maybe even anger. Instead, I just nodded and slipped the phone into my pocket. "That's it?" she asked. "What else is there to say?" I walked over to my toolbox and started putting away my wrenches, each one finding its designated spot with mechanical precision. "You want to pretend we're broken up? I can do that." "Rhett, don't." I held up a hand without turning around. "You've made your position clear. I'll stay at Samir's place this weekend. You can have the apartment." She lingered for another moment, perhaps expecting more of a fight. When none came, she turned and walked back toward the door, her heels echoing in the empty space. "I'll call you Monday," she said over her shoulder. "We can talk then." The door slammed shut behind her, leaving me alone with the smell of motor oil and the sound of rain. I stood there for a long time, listening to the storm and thinking about the lease folder sitting in my filing cabinet. The lease that was in my name only, because Kina's credit had been shot when we got married. The lease she'd apparently forgotten about in her eagerness to audition my replacement. That night, I didn't go to Samir's place. Instead, I went home to our apartment on 5th Street and methodically began executing the separation steps we'd discussed, but never implemented during our rough patches. I changed the mailing address on all my accounts, redirected the utilities to my name exclusively, and uploaded the lease addendum naming me sole occupant during the required notice period. I photographed every room, documenting the condition of our shared space. I boxed up my inventory receipts from the shop and moved them to a storage unit I rented under my name alone. By dawn, I had created a paper trail that would make any lawyer proud. The apartment felt different in the morning light, cleaner somehow, more honest. Kina's spare phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A text from Jasper. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Booked us a table at Morrison's." Morrison's, the restaurant where Kina and I had our first date, where I'd proposed 2 years later, nervous and sweating in my only decent suit. The irony wasn't lost on me. I powered off the phone and slipped it into the same drawer where we kept the takeout menus and expired coupons. Then I grabbed my keys and headed to the shop. I had work to do. The Mustang's engine was still waiting for me, patient and honest in a way people rarely were. I lost myself in the rhythm of the work, the familiar dance of diagnosis and repair. Engines didn't lie to you. They didn't pretend to be something they weren't. When they broke, they showed you exactly what was wrong. Around noon, my friend Samir stopped by with coffee and his usual commentary on the state of the world. Samir owned the dive bar 3 blocks down from my shop, a place where the beer was cheap and the conversations were cheaper. He'd been my closest friend since I moved to the city, and the only person who knew exactly how bad things had gotten between Kina and me. "You look like someone who just lost a bet," he said, handing me a cup of coffee that was probably strong enough to strip paint. "Kina wants a trial separation," I told him. "For the weekend." Samir raised an eyebrow. He was a big man, former boxer with hands like sledgehammers and a surprisingly gentle disposition. Trial separation or trial replacement? The latter. Jasper? Jasper. Samir nodded slowly, the way he did when he was processing information he didn't like. "What are you going to do?" I took a sip of coffee and felt it burn all the way down. "Give her exactly what she asked for." "Meaning?" "She wants to pretend we're broken up. So we're broken up. Permanently." I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I walked over to my computer and logged into my email account. The automated receipt from the hotel was already there, time-stamped from the night before. Jasper Quaid had checked into the Marriott downtown, using the credit card I'd added him to as an authorized user during a weekend trip last year, a card Kina had apparently given him access to. "Look at this," I said, turning the screen towards Samir. He squinted at the email, then let out a low whistle. "He's using your card?" Kina must have given him the number, probably told him it was hers. "What are you going to do with this?" I forwarded the email to 2 recipients, Mr. Feld, our building manager, and the insurance company that covered our renter's policy. Both would be very interested to know that unauthorized persons were using my financial information. "Creating a paper trail," I said. "If she wants to play games, we're going to play by the rules." Samir grinned, the kind of expression that usually meant someone was about to learn a hard lesson. "You sneaky bastard. You're not just giving her what she wants, you're giving her what she deserves." "She asked me to pretend we broke up. I'm just making sure the pretense becomes reality." The rest of Friday passed in a blur of routine maintenance and strategic planning. I changed passwords on all our shared accounts, updated emergency contact information, and submitted the required documentation to make myself the sole leaseholder. Every action was legal, documented, and irreversible. By evening, I was sitting in Samir's bar, nursing a beer, and watching the local news. The anchor was talking about the tech conference downtown, the one that had brought Jasper back to town. They showed footage of entrepreneurs and investors mingling in hotel ballrooms, shaking hands and making deals that would reshape the digital landscape. "There's your boy," Samir said, pointing at the screen. Jasper was visible in the background of one shot, tall and lean in an expensive suit, his hair perfectly styled and his smile perfectly practiced. He looked like a man who had never doubted his own worth, never questioned whether he deserved the things he wanted. "Not my boy," I said. "Not anymore." My phone buzzed with a text from Kina. "Having dinner now. Thanks for understanding." I showed the message to Samir, who shook his head in disgust. "The audacity of this woman. She's actually thanking you for letting her cheat." "She's not cheating," I said. "We're broken up, remember? She made sure to establish that before she left." Semantics. Legal distinctions. Around 11, another text came through. "Staying downtown tonight. Don't wait up." I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop and began researching Washington State's requirements for lease modifications and tenant rights. The law was clear. As the sole named leaseholder, I had the right to determine occupancy during the notice period. Kina's name wasn't on any of the paperwork. "You're really going through with this," Samir observed. "She made her choice. I'm just honoring it." "And when she comes back Sunday night expecting everything to go back to normal?" I closed the laptop and finished my beer. Then she's going to learn the difference between pretending and reality. Saturday morning brought more rain and a series of automated confirmations. The utility companies had processed my requests. The post office had approved the address change. The insurance company had flagged the unauthorized card usage and temporarily suspended the account pending investigation. I spent the day at the shop, working on the Mustang and fielding phone calls from various bureaucracies. Each conversation was brief and professional. Yes, I was the account holder. No, I had not authorized anyone else to use my information. Yes, I wanted to proceed with the changes immediately. By Sunday evening, I had transformed our shared life into my solitary one. The apartment was still legally mine, the accounts were in my name alone, and every piece of documentation told the same story. Rhett Vossen, single occupant, sole responsibility. Kina's spare phone remained powered off in the kitchen drawer, its silence more eloquent than any argument we'd ever had. Monday morning arrived with the kind of gray drizzle that made the Pacific Northwest famous. I was at the shop early, installing new spark plugs in the Mustang when my personal phone rang. Kina's name appeared on the screen, and for a moment I considered letting it go to voicemail. But curiosity won out. "Hello," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Rhett, hi, I'm back." Her tone was bright, almost cheerful, like someone returning from a pleasant vacation. "Can we talk? I think we should meet somewhere and discuss everything." "Discuss what?" "The weekend. What happened? Where we go from here." I set down my wrench and leaned against the workbench. "Where do you think we go from here?" "Well, I was hoping we could put this behind us and move forward. I know the situation was unusual, but how was your audition?" The question hung in the air for several seconds. I could hear traffic in the background, the sound of the city waking up around her. "My what?" "Your audition. For my replacement. How did it go?" "Rhett, that's not fair. It wasn't like that." "What was it like?" Another pause. When she spoke again, her voice had lost some of its artificial brightness. "It was complicated. Jasper and I have history, you know that. I needed to understand if there were still feelings there." "And?" "And I think I have my answer." "Which is?" "Can we please do this in person? I'm outside your shop right now." I walked to the window and peered through the grimy glass. Kina's Honda Civic was parked across the street, and I could see her sitting behind the wheel with her phone pressed to her ear. She looked tired, older somehow than she had on Friday night. "Come in," I said, and hung up. She crossed the street carefully, dodging puddles in her designer shoes. When she entered the shop, she looked around with the same expression she'd worn on Friday night, like she was seeing it for the first time. "You've been busy," she said, noticing the organized tool chest and the clean workbench. Everything had its place. Every surface had been scrubbed clean. "Productive weekend," I agreed. She pulled out her spare phone and set it on the workbench between us. "I'd like this back, please." "It's yours. Take it." "Rhett, I know you're angry, but—" "I'm not angry," I said, and realized I was telling the truth. The rage I'd expected to feel had been replaced by something colder and more focused. "I'm just following your lead." "What do you mean?" I walked over to my filing cabinet and pulled out a folder thick with documents. "You asked me to pretend we were broken up, so I broke us up." "Pretend, Rhett." I said, pretend. The thing about pretending is that it requires both people to be acting. You weren't acting. I handed her the first document, the lease modification naming me as sole occupant. Her eyes widened as she read through the legal language. "You can't do this. I live there too." "Actually, I can, and I did." I handed her the next document, the utility transfers. "As of this morning, all services are in my name exclusively. The building manager has been notified that you're no longer an authorized occupant." "This is insane. You're being vindictive." "I'm being practical." I showed her the insurance claim form. "Did you know that Jasper used my credit card at the hotel? The one you gave him access to? The color drained from her face. That was an accident. He thought it was mine. Funny thing about accidents, they leave paper trails. The insurance company is very interested in unauthorized usage of my financial information. Rhett, please. Can we just talk about this rationally? We are talking rationally. You wanted to see if there was still something between you and Jasper. I wanted to see if there was still something between us. Turns out, we both got our answers. She sank into the folding chair I kept for customers, her shoulders sagging. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen? I thought I could figure things out, and then come back, and we could work through it together. Work through what? Your decision to audition my replacement? It wasn't an audition. Then what was it? She was quiet for a long time, staring at the phone on the workbench. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I've been unhappy for a long time, Rhett. We both have. We don't talk anymore. We don't laugh together. We barely even look at each other. When Jasper called and said he was coming to town, I thought maybe if I could understand what I'd lost with him, I could figure out what I was losing with you. And what did you figure out? That I made a mistake. Which mistake? Marrying me or cheating on me? I didn't cheat on you. We were broken up. For a weekend, at your request, so you could sleep with another man. So I could understand my own feelings. I gathered up the documents and put them back in the folder. Well, now you understand them. And now you understand mine. What are you saying? I'm saying we're not pretending anymore. The words hit her like a physical blow. She actually flinched, her hand going to her throat in a gesture I'd seen her make during particularly stressful client meetings. You don't mean that. I mean every word of it. Rhett, please. I know I handled this badly, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling. There's nothing to fix. You made your choice. You chose to see if Jasper was a better option than me. Turns out, the process of finding out destroyed what we had anyway. That's not true, isn't it? Look me in the eye and tell me you didn't sleep with him. She couldn't do it. She looked at the floor, at the walls, at the Mustang's chrome bumper, but she couldn't look at me. I thought so, I said. It was one night. One mistake. No, it was a choice. You chose him over me. You chose to risk everything we had for one night with him. That tells me everything I need to know about how much our marriage meant to you. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, Kina. Marriage isn't fair. But it is honest, or it's supposed to be. You stopped being honest with me the moment you asked me to pretend we were broken up. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the concrete floor. So that's it? 3 years of marriage and you're just going to throw it away? I'm not throwing anything away. I'm just refusing to pretend that what we had was worth preserving. What about love? What about commitment? What about for better or worse? What about it? You tested those vows this weekend and they failed. That's not my fault. She picked up her phone and clutched it against her chest like a shield. I need time to think about this. Take all the time you need, but take it somewhere else. The apartment is mine, the lease is mine, and the life we shared is over. You can't just kick me out, I have rights. Actually, I can. Check the lease, check the law, check with a lawyer if you want, but check from somewhere else because you don't live with me anymore. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her cycling through emotions like channels on a television. Anger, disbelief, desperation, and finally something that looked almost like respect. I never thought you had it in you, she said. Had what in me? This. The ability to be ruthless. I'm not being ruthless. I'm being honest. For the first time in months, maybe years, I'm being completely honest about what I want and what I'm willing to accept. And what you want is for me to disappear. What I want is for you to face the consequences of your choices. You chose to prioritize your feelings for another man over your commitment to me. Now you get to live with that choice." She walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. "What if I told you I made a mistake? What if I told you I want to fight for us?" "I'd say you're about 6 months too late." "6 months? That's how long you've been pulling away from me, Kina. How long you've been treating our marriage like an inconvenience. This weekend wasn't the beginning of the end, it was just the end." She nodded slowly, like someone finally understanding a difficult concept. "I guess I deserve this." "You deserve honesty. That's what I'm giving you." After she left, I sat in the silence of my shop and thought about the conversation. I'd expected to feel angry or sad or vindicated. Instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Clarity. My phone buzzed with a text message, not from Kina, but from an unknown number. "This is Jasper. We need to talk." I stared at the message for a long time, then typed back. "No, we don't." "Yes, we do. Meet me at Morrison's tonight at 8. Morrison's. The restaurant where he'd taken my wife on Friday night. The audacity was almost impressive. "Not interested," I replied. "I think you'll want to hear what I have to say." "I doubt it. It's about Kina, and about what really happened this weekend." I set the phone down and went back to work on the Mustang. Whatever Jasper wanted to tell me, whatever justification or explanation he thought I needed to hear, I wasn't interested. The weekend was over. The marriage was over. The only thing left was the paperwork. But as the afternoon wore on, curiosity began to gnaw at me. What could Jasper possibly want to say? What could he know about the weekend that I didn't already understand? At 7:30, I found myself driving toward Morrison's. Morrison's hadn't changed much in the 3 years since I'd proposed to Kina there. Same dim lighting, same burgundy leather booths, same pretentious wine list that made me feel like I needed a translator. I spotted Jasper immediately. He was sitting in the corner booth we'd always preferred, the one with a view of the city lights through the rain-streaked windows. He looked different than he had on the news footage. Older, maybe, or just tired. His expensive suit was wrinkled, and his usually perfect hair looked like he'd been running his hands through it. When he saw me approaching, he stood up with the kind of nervous energy that suggested this meeting meant more to him than it did to me. "Rhett, thanks for coming." "I'm here. Talk." I slid into the booth across from him, noting the half-empty bottle of wine and the untouched bread basket. He'd been here for a while, working up the courage for whatever he wanted to say. "Can I buy you a drink?" "You can get to the point." He poured himself another glass of wine with hands that weren't quite steady. "This is harder than I thought it would be." "What's hard about it? You took my wife to bed. Congratulations. Mission accomplished." "It's not that simple." "Sure it is. She asked me to pretend we were broken up so she could test drive her ex-boyfriend. You were happy to oblige. End of story." "Except it's not the end, is it? She's devastated, Rhett. She came to my hotel room this morning crying, begging me to help her fix things with you." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. And I told her the truth. That there's nothing between us anymore. That there never really was, not the way she remembered. "Then why did you sleep with her?" He was quiet for a long moment, swirling the wine in his glass like it held the answers to life's great mysteries. "Because she asked me to. Because I'm weak. Because I thought maybe she was right. Maybe there was something worth exploring. And there wasn't. No, there wasn't." He looked up at me, and I was surprised to see something that looked like guilt in his eyes. "She's not the same person I dated 5 years ago. Neither am I, for that matter. We're both different people now, and those different people don't belong together. So why are you telling me this? Because I think she belongs with you." I laughed, a short, bitter sound that made the couple at the next table look over. "You've got some nerve, I'll give you that. Hear me out." No, I've heard enough. You had your weekend with my wife, decided she wasn't worth keeping, and now you want to hand her back to me like some kind of consolation prize. Thanks, but no thanks. It's not like that. Then what's it like? He leaned forward, his voice dropping to just above a whisper. She talked about you all weekend, Rhett. Even when we were together, she was talking about you, about your shop, about the things you build with your hands, about how you never lie to her even when the truth hurts. Funny way of showing appreciation. She's scared. Of what? Of becoming her mother. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Kina's mother had been married 4 times, always chasing the fantasy of perfect love, always convinced that the next man would be the one to complete her. Kina had sworn she'd never be like that, never be the kind of woman who treated relationships like auditions. Her mother, I repeated. She said she's been feeling trapped, like she's settled for something safe instead of something passionate. She wanted to know if what we had was real or just nostalgia. And your conclusion? Nostalgia. Definitely nostalgia. He took another sip of wine. But what she has with you, that's real. Complicated and messy and sometimes painful, but real. If it's so real, why did she risk it for a weekend with you? Because she's an idiot. The blunt assessment surprised me. Because she's 36 years old and panicking about whether she's living the right life. Because she watched her best friend Talia get engaged to some millionaire last month and started questioning all her own choices. Talia's engaged to some tech investor from Silicon Valley. Big wedding planned for next summer, the works. Kina's been obsessing over it, wondering if she missed out on something by marrying a mechanic instead of someone with money. The pieces were starting to fall into place. Talia Morrison had been Kina's college roommate and remained her closest friend. She was also the most materialistic person I'd ever met, the kind of woman who measured success by the size of her diamond ring and the price tag on her handbag. So, this was about money. Partly, but mostly, it was about fear. Fear that she'd chosen security over passion, comfort over excitement. And now? Now she knows the difference between excitement and happiness. Excitement fades, Rhett. Happiness, that's something you build together, piece by piece, day by day. I stared at him across the table, trying to figure out his angle. Why are you telling me this? What do you get out of it? Peace of mind, maybe. The knowledge that I didn't destroy something good for something meaningless. You did destroy something good. Whether it was for something meaningless or not, doesn't change that. Maybe, or maybe I just revealed cracks that were already there. He wasn't wrong, and that made me angrier than anything else he'd said. The problems in our marriage hadn't started this weekend. They'd been building for months, maybe years. The distance between us, the way we'd stopped really talking, the gradual erosion of intimacy and connection. She wants to fight for you, Jasper continued. She asked me to tell you that. She can tell me herself. She's afraid you won't listen. She's right. Why? The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on my anger, on the betrayal and the logistics of separation, that I hadn't really examined my own motivations. Because I don't trust her anymore, I said finally. Because she showed me exactly how much our marriage meant to her when she was willing to risk it for one night with you. What if she's willing to earn that trust back? How? By promising it won't happen again? By going to counseling? By pretending this weekend never happened? By proving that she chooses you, not because you're safe or convenient, but because you're the person she wants to build a life with. She had 3 years to prove that. She chose to spend them pulling away from me instead. People make mistakes, Rhett. Some mistakes are too big to come back from. He nodded slowly, like someone accepting an unwelcome verdict. I guess I understand that. Do you? I made a mistake like that once, with someone I cared about. I thought I could fix it later, thought love was enough to overcome anything. I was wrong. What happened? She left, married someone else, someone who didn't make her question her own worth. We sat in silence for a while, watching the rain streak down the windows and the city lights blur into abstract patterns. The wine bottle was nearly empty, and the restaurant was starting to fill up with the dinner crowd. "Can I ask you something?" Jasper said finally. "Shoot. Do you love her?" The question should have been easy to answer. 3 years of marriage, shared dreams, shared struggles, shared moments of genuine happiness. But sitting there in the restaurant where I'd proposed, looking across the table at the man who'd spent the weekend in my wife's bed, I found myself struggling with the words. "I did," I said finally. Past tense? I don't know. Maybe. It's hard to tell the difference between love and habit after 3 years. What would it take to find out? Time, distance, perspective. And her? Her what? What would it take for her to prove that what you had was worth saving? I thought about it, really thought about it. What would it take? What gesture or promise or change could possibly bridge the gap that had opened between us this weekend? "I don't think there is anything," I said. "Some things, once broken, can't be fixed. Even if she's willing to try? Especially if she's willing to try, because that would mean she's doing it out of guilt, not love." Jasper finished his wine and signaled for the check. "You're probably right, but for what it's worth, I think you're making a mistake." "How's that?" "You're punishing her for being human, for having doubts and fears and making a stupid decision based on those fears." "I'm not punishing her. I'm protecting myself." "From what?" "From going through this again in 5 years when she decides she needs to test drive someone else." The waiter brought the check, and Jasper paid without looking at the total. Outside, the rain had intensified, turning the streets into rivers of reflected light. "One more thing," he said as we stood up to leave. "What?" "She never stopped wearing her wedding ring. Even when we were together, she never took it off." I looked down at my own left hand, at the simple gold band I'd worn for 3 years. I'd thought about taking it off a dozen times since Friday night, but somehow I never had. "Doesn't change anything," I said. "Maybe not, but it means something." We parted ways in the parking lot without shaking hands or exchanging pleasantries. I sat in my truck for a long time, watching him drive away in his rental car, thinking about everything he'd said and everything he hadn't said. When I finally started the engine and headed home, I realized I was driving toward the apartment out of habit. Our apartment. My apartment now. Kina's car was parked in the visitor's space, and I could see a light on in the living room window. She was waiting for me. I drove past without stopping and headed back to Samir's bar instead. Some conversations were better postponed until morning, when the wine had worn off and the emotions had settled into something more manageable. But as I pulled into the bar's parking lot, I couldn't stop thinking about what Jasper had said about the wedding ring, about how she'd never taken it off, even when she was betraying everything it represented. Maybe it meant something, or maybe it just meant she was too guilty to face the full reality of what she was doing. Either way, it didn't change the fundamental problem. Trust, once broken, was almost impossible to rebuild. And without trust, everything else was just pretending. I was done pretending. 3 days passed before Kina called again. 3 days of working on the Mustang, drinking beer with Samir, and sleeping in the spare room above his bar. 3 days of not answering her texts, not responding to her emails, not engaging with her increasingly desperate attempts to start a conversation. On Thursday morning, she was waiting outside my shop when I arrived for work. She looked like she hadn't slept much. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual business attire. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. "No, we don't." "Yes, we do. I've been thinking about everything you said, everything that happened. and I need you to understand something. I unlocked the shop door and walked inside, leaving it open behind me. She followed, closing the door against the morning chill. I was wrong, she said, about everything. About asking you to pretend we were broken up, about sleeping with Jasper, about thinking I could somehow test our marriage without destroying it. Okay. That's it? Just okay? I pulled on my work coveralls and gathered the tools I'd need to finish the Mustang's tune-up. What do you want me to say, Kina? That it's fine? That we can just move past it? Because we can't. Why not? Because trust isn't like an engine. When it breaks, you can't just replace the broken parts and expect it to run like new. So that's it? You're not even willing to try? I stopped what I was doing and looked at her directly for the first time since she'd arrived. What exactly are you asking me to try? Marriage counseling, therapy, whatever it takes to fix this. And what if it can't be fixed? Then at least we'll know we tried. I already know. Some things are too broken to repair. She was quiet for a long moment, watching me organize my tools with mechanical precision. Everything in its place, everything serving a purpose. Jasper told me he talked to you, she said finally. He did. What did you think about what he said? I think he's trying to assuage his guilt by playing matchmaker. What if he's right, though? What if this whole thing was just me panicking about whether I was living the right life? Then you got your answer. You weren't. That's not what I concluded. No? What did you conclude? That I was an idiot. That I risked the best thing in my life because I was scared it wasn't good enough. I opened the Mustang's hood and checked the oil level, more for something to do with my hands than because it needed checking. And now? Now I know better. Now I know the difference between what we have and what I thought I wanted. Had. What? What we had. Past tense. It doesn't have to be past tense. Yes, it does. Because even if I could forgive you for sleeping with Jasper, I can't forgive you for the calculation behind it. You didn't make a mistake, Kina. You made a plan. You asked me to step aside so you could audition my replacement. That's not something you do to someone you love. I do love you. You love the security I represent. You love the idea of being married to someone reliable and predictable, but you don't love me enough to choose me over the possibility of something better. That's not true, isn't it? When Jasper called, your first instinct wasn't to tell him you were married and unavailable. It was to figure out how to see him without technically cheating. That tells me everything I need to know about your priorities. She sank into the customer chair, her shoulders sagging with defeat. So there's nothing I can do? Nothing I can say that would change your mind? No. What if I told you I've already turned down a job offer in Seattle? A promotion that would have meant more money, more prestige, everything I thought I wanted. I'd say that's a decision you should make based on what's best for your career, not what might win me back. What if I told you I've cut off all contact with Jasper, blocked his number, deleted his emails, told him never to contact me again? I'd say that's what you should have done 3 years ago when you married me. What if I told you I'm willing to sign a post-nuptial agreement, something that would protect you financially if this ever happened again? I'd say you're missing the point. This isn't about money or legal protection. It's about respect. And you can't sign a contract that guarantees you'll respect me. She was crying now, quiet tears that she wiped away with the back of her hand. So that's it? 3 years of marriage? And you're just going to throw it all away? I'm not throwing anything away. I'm just refusing to pretend that what's broken can be fixed. What about the good times? What about everything we built together? What about them? They happened. They were real. But they're not enough to overcome this. Why not? Because trust is like virginity, Kina. Once it's gone forever. You can rebuild a relationship after betrayal, but you can't rebuild trust. You can only build something new that looks like trust, but isn't quite the same thing. And you're not willing to try building something new? No, because I deserve better than a relationship built on the wreckage of betrayal. She stood up abruptly, anger finally breaking through the sadness. You're being self-righteous. Maybe. You're acting like you're perfect, like you never made any mistakes in our marriage. I never asked you to step aside so I could drive your replacement. No, but you checked out emotionally months ago. You stopped trying, stopped fighting for us, stopped caring whether we worked or not. You're right, I did. So you're just as responsible for this mess as I am. You're absolutely right, I am responsible. For letting our marriage deteriorate to the point where you felt justified in looking elsewhere. For not fighting harder to reconnect with you. For choosing the path of least resistance instead of confronting our problems directly. Then why can't we both take responsibility and try to fix things together? Because my mistakes were sins of omission. Yours was a sin of commission. I failed to fight for our marriage. You actively betrayed it.